but I guess we learn, right? We humans, we adapt. In that way, you mentioned fantastic breakthroughs, right? In vaccine development, in transformations, local and global, right? We hopefully more resilient humankind because of what we've been through, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's so important also to think about how can we share knowledge, how can we collaborate globally, how can we also link this to products. When I moved on after chief procurement officer, and I was very lucky that we acquired also three leading companies for source to pay, what SAP decided to do. But I moved on to a COO role, and I changed a little bit the perspective by now looking and understanding what can companies do in the future, what are priorities, by listening to the customer. I think customer experience is absolutely key. You should not try to sell your products to customers, you should provide solutions to customers. And that's what we learned and developed, for example, also a risk management tool to integrate it in procurement solutions. And I think this really helps. And interacting, collaborating, and learning from customers definitely makes sense, but also collaborating then with suppliers to think about the innovations. The coffee taps was a great example. What we already discussed. The iPhone, by the way, we talked about that. Isn't it an amazing example also when Tim Cook was Chief Supply Chain Officer prior to his current role as CEO at Apple, that he invented the Gorilla Glass with Corning, one of the key suppliers for glass production. He basically teamed up, and we're thinking about we need a different display. Before that, and I'm a little bit older, as you can see, my gray hair starts growing. And by the way, the hairdressers are open, but unfortunately, I couldn't get an appointment so far. That's the reason why I look how I look right now. But when I grew up, basically phones, first of all, phones, when I really grew up, phones were like this. You had to dial one number and then you turn back. And by the way, for the millennials or Generation Z, Alpha, whoever is listening to that, it was not the entire number. It was one digit, and you had to do it for everyone.
It was therapeutic. It was therapeutic, Marcel. Okay, when you that was fun. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
It was, and unfortunately, it got a keyboard, a keypad that you could just click on the number. But basically, the first mobiles. When I got my first one, I did skip the Motorola. The big one, but basically I started with Ericsson GH172. This was such a big device, very heavy. The only thing what it could do was basically also dialing numbers, and of course you could answer calls if anyone called you, but it was very expensive also. It was more than $2 a minute. Every minute you started, you had to pay $2. So therefore, the usage was also very limited on that. But the displays, they were so tiny. And basically, they got, after 2 or 3 weeks, they started getting these tiny scratches. And think about what it does after 3 months, 6 months, or even 9 months. Usually they didn't last so long because there were always something what could break. At least my first mobiles definitely got broken a lot, and you couldn't really use the display for anything else except of seeing a number and dialing a number and answering calls. But basically, look how this changed right now. I'm doing this video with my iPhone, a wonderful display. What I have, I can type, I can speak, it translates my voice. This is really how the innovation could go in a fairly short time frame. When it started 2007, and now going 14 years later to that level, this is amazing what happened in between, isn't it?